Hello, my lovely audience. Today is Christina here. Today is new episode of Guest and Podcast, Growing Business Online with Christina. And I'm so excited today to have my special guest speaker for the first time, Sir John Chan. John, welcome to the new episode of Guest and Podcast.
Christina, thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Thank you for joining me. John, tell us a little bit about you, who you are, what you
Sure,
do, where you're from. A little
sure.
bit about you.
Yeah, for sure. So right now, I'm a performance marketer by trade. I run a growth marketing agency called 2X. We're based in Vancouver, Canada. We're a small team. We're about 8 people, and we primarily help e-commerce and software companies with digital marketing online. So think of Google Ads and Meta ads on Facebook and Instagram, that type of thing primarily. We do a little bit of TikTok every now and then. But our bread and butter is we run media buying campaigns. And part of that is the production of the ad creatives and the landing pages to support direct response media buying campaigns. And yeah, that's kind of the nutshell. And happy to get into the background and how I got here.
Yeah, that's lovely, And when you are based in Canada, Vancouver, is that correct?
That's correct.
And tell us a little bit. You mentioned you're so in terms that you run your agency, but tell us a little bit about your background. I know that you were in the area of web designing and just to share with our. And how did you start either your designing and what triggered you to start your agency,
Yeah,
digital
for sure.
marketing
So
agency?
the agency's been running for about 9 years at this point. But if you go all the way back to how I started making money online and
Yes,
running a
it's
business
going to be
online,
so useful for our listeners. Just maybe you can influence them to start something like you,
maybe, right? We'll find out. I mean,
as you done before.
for me, I started back in 2006. And so I was still in university at the time, but I think I was mostly disenchanted with school. I felt like school was a little bit slow for me. And I think also just wasn't the right headspace to go to class regularly. But I think one of the trigger points for me at the time was I read this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it was talking about this concept of like running and minding your own business and what have you. And I think it was just reading that message at the right place at the right time because growing up, I thought I wanted to be an animator. I was very good at drawing, I was good at math, but I wasn't really sure if I wanted like what kind of career path I really wanted to take outside of that. And I was also very heavily involved in Taekwondo. I was an athlete. I competed for the Canadian national team. I represented Team Canada for on different occasions for Olympic sparring and what's called Pumse at the time. But a large part of it was me trying to figure out what is it that really resonated with me. And at the time, I've met while I was reading the book, I also met with one of my teammates, at one of these tournaments that was also running a business. So I asked him, "It's like, hey, like, what do you do, and how do you like get involved in all these type of things, and how do you run businesses?" So he became one of the first mentors that taught me and showed me under his wing of what it was like to run his own business, and a lot of the things about his lifestyle, a lot of the ways that he manages time, and the kinds of problems that he faced, it really resonated with me, and that's kind of how it all started. And again, this was 2006, and so back then I didn't have a lot of skill sets. I was second year into my university schooling, and so the one skill that the technical skill that I developed was coding from high school. I was able to build web pages, and I've always had like an interest in doing that. And so I started doing a freelancing business. I wasn't very good at running the business online at the time, but it gave me my foot in the door of getting my first set of clients and being tasked with if I was paid for a certain amount, that I had to deliver a particular website, and that kind of like showed me the ropes, and a lot of the journey really started from there.
Yeah, and it's very interesting when you mentioned that you were in sport for as a national team for Canada, and maybe how just to let me know, just in for our audience, how sports um, helped you. Maybe did sport help you to be who you are today, just in terms of business and other things? As you said
Oh,
that you didn't see yourself just to be just on in the sports area, just to start with your teammates something new in terms of business and what you do, what you do today, what you're doing now?
Of course, absolutely. And I think I love that question because, looking back, it's very obvious. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs and other business folks that I meet today, more often than not, they actually, or even actually if you're an employee at a certain company, more often than not, I find that people that are high performers in their respective roles often had a area in their life, whether if it's sports or whether if it's in something else. It could be, they're really good at music, or they're really good with chess, or they're really good with something else that's tangentially related to their or not even tangentially related, completely different than what their core day-to-day work looks like. But they understand the progression of how do you go from being a beginner to being a high-level performer through a different medium. And nowadays I almost empathize with running a business as being almost like an emotional athlete. How do you actually manage your day-to-day performance without external guidance and push for and motivation for the different sort of directions you need to go? And so a lot of those days of being an athlete really carried over to the different ups and downs of running a business online, or just managing in a business. And so I really do resonate with being an athlete in that way. And I also see that reflected in a lot of other performers as well. Um, so it definitely has played a really important role for myself.
And in terms of, do you still train? Are you still in sport and play something like that? Not.
I'm retired, but what I find myself doing is I've been going back to the gym, and I think historically I didn't really like going to the gym, and I don't find myself like gravitating towards fitness. I found it boring. As I got older, I in my 30s I was diagnosed with ADHD. So later on in life, I kind of found out why some of the earlier sort of like decision making kind of led to that. But one of the byproducts of that was that I find that if I got into a sport that had an external sort of like at a ball or at an opponent to like fixate on, it was easy to capture my attention. So I didn't really like going to the gym for a long time, but now I have a different relationship with going to the gym. I see going to the gym as a form of discipline. The boringness is the point. And I think a lot of the metaphors of being good with running a business carries a lot of the same metaphors of what it means to be good at going to the gym. You need to carry yourself outside of the gym in how you track your diet. You need to make sure all your metrics are recorded in a way that is trackable and traceable. And you need to have a certain level of consistency to wait for the hard work to pay off. And so a lot of those metaphors, I really resonate with going to the gym now. And it's only been maybe like a year and a half before that's going to be the new obsession. For a while, I find myself trying to find some new thing to get into that really would stick. I've tried playing chess, and I still play chess nowadays. Um, I tried different sports, but right now, I think between chess as a hobby, and going to the gym as another hobby, and playing video games, that's my third sort of outlet. Those are the few mediums that I find to be really helpful for me to continue sort of my own progression and growth
But you're
outside
fan
of work.
also of video games, you
Of
mentioned
course,
that. You
of course.
started with that, to
No, of
your
course.
career
Games are
in
very
young
interesting.
age.
No, for sure. Games are very interesting because I find games as a very, again, useful metaphor, especially in competitive games, because it helps you think about leaderboards. It helps you think about percentile of other players within that area. And it's also a great environment where you have a risk-free way to make mistakes. You learn games, you learn ways to exploit a video game, you make a lot of decision making within sort of like in the context of a game, that you get to see the payoffs of good or bad decision making and see how you play out in the game. So in a lot of ways, I actually do think that just as much as sports have impacted the way I run my business, video games have impacted me in the same way, where it gave me a very sharper way of thinking about problem solving. And in many ways, as I spend a lot of my time and energy, spending time in ad accounts, right? To me, it's almost like a video game where I can see patterns and I can see places of like, oh, that area can be exploited, or that area I can have game theory in terms of how I play, the game as a media buyer compared to another company, another marketing team. And so it's almost like in many ways now, I almost think of marketing as a competitive sport, right? And video games gave me that sort of translation of how do I conduct my team? How do I train my team? How do I build playbooks to make sure that the entire team performs? There's a lot of really interesting crossover, both from sports and video games, as I apply into
So,
my
and
business. And
sport is so important to format, like to be to when we grow, to formatting us as a persons, as a business owner, however, students. because sport is very, very useful
Absolutely.
for our lives.
Absolutely.
And when you mention marketing, I'm also in digital. I'm in digital marketing area, but I'm everything what I do is in organic. What, how do you resonate with what, I don't want to say, tell me, let me know definition, but how do you resonate? What is marketing from your, how you can, did someone ask you, what is marketing for you? How you can
Sure.
express it for people to resonate with that?
Sure, for sure. So marketing, I have a few definitions that I resonate with and I gravitate towards depending on the context of the situation. But the most fundamental thing we think about marketing is that marketing is a amplifier. It's a microphone. It's a way for you to broadcast a particular message in a way that allows you to reach audiences in ways that was very hard to reach 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. If you go back to the origins of marketing in the Mad Men era, right? A lot of times it's taking a publication and bringing it to the masses and having distribution for it. So, and fundamentally, I think of marketing as the amplifier. But the other aspect that I think about marketing is that marketing is sales at scale, right? And so when I think about a product or service that I'm trying to sell online for myself or help another company a product or service to sell, a lot of it really boils down to understanding why would someone want to buy this particular product or service in the first place, reverse engineer all the psychology behind it, and carry that into a campaign or a messaging that other people also probably have the same problems or challenges that need to be solved by said product or service. And so thinking about marketing as sales at scale allows me to think about which direction do I take a product or service, or which kind of messaging or angles do I develop versus which ones I ignore. And that's also been a very helpful way for me to think about, and also for me to train my staff and team to think about how do we know if an ad campaign is effective or not, or when do we lean on storytelling and brand awareness versus when do we lean on direct response to make sure that the audiences that we're targeting to are going to take action and convert right away. We think a lot about that a lot, but those two buckets is basically how I think about marketing, as an amplifier, as the core definition of what the job is, and as marketing as sales at scale, as an evaluation for how do I know if I'm doing the job correctly.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's going to be so beneficial for our listeners. Sometimes there are people that they're stuck, just to resonate with marketing, how it, because when we wanted to say, to stand out of the crowd, and you can say like, when you go to the Google and say, you are going to be first in Google, and there are people who say, okay, there is Google Ads, there are also some Google grants, let's say. If you resonate with that, I have one, my friend of mine, he was running that for one company for US. And then Facebook ads, Google ads, and other what you do. So or as I said, I'm not in that area of business. I'm in organically, like SEO and word of mouth, or just not some kind of organic promotion. And can you share with us like in what you do in terms of ads and campaign, just to share with us, or maybe if you can express it, how do you do that? Just like example for one company, or and who do you mostly work with? Who are your clients? Just in
Sure. No,
terms.
I appreciate that. So I think one way to think about, so let's start with the clients first, because primarily we find ourselves working with e-commerce brands and software companies that are selling online. So they're digitally first, right? They have digital presence first. Sometimes they're large enough to have a retail presence, but they're generally either selling a physical product that they ship to your home, or in some cases, a digital product that you sign up for online. And so when we think about advertising channels. So the two main channels that you have for paid advertising would be something like paid social environments, where you have meta ads on like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You can extend that to Reddit or Twitter or X, whatever you call it. And there's that one category, and the entire category of channels, they're fundamentally like based on the same like core ideas, but it's dealing with people that are in their downtime. So I'm on my phone, I'm on my couch, I'm not looking for a product or service specifically, I'm doom scrolling on my phone and I come across an ad and I'm being introduced to the product or idea. And because of that, that entire category of advertising for paid social is what we deem as demand generation. You're not thinking about your product or service. Now suddenly I am after I see an ad. And so you're creating demand for something that wasn't there before. And it's a very visual and auditory medium. So that's the primary mode that's selling. And that's kind of like one large category. And so when we think about building graphics, right, for what we call static ads, or video ads where we're producing like a 15-second clip or 30-second clip, typically on a 9:16 format in vertical, maybe 1:1. But generally speaking, we're trying to take someone that doesn't know anything on your product or service all the way to, by the end of the 30 seconds, from 0 to 60, where you're thinking about, you know what, I now need this product. And marketing has a lot of different frameworks for thinking about how do you take someone that is cold to someone that is, you know what, I'm ready to be interested to learn more about your product or ready to buy. And one of the frameworks we like to think about is called AIDA, right? So AIDA, right? Which stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. And so attention is basically how do you get someone to stop and pay attention to your ad within the first 3 seconds, right? And so typically what we do is we'll figure out how do we design a video clip within the first 3 seconds, or if it's a static ad, how do we have a headline that captures somebody's attention to make them, you know what, I'm going to stop and scroll and read the rest. And that's kind of like the first part. But the remaining part of interest in building desire boils down to the education of the product or service. And generally speaking, a product or service have to be genuinely useful or desirable. There has to be inherent values for it. Maybe there's certain benefits or features that are other customers have found really useful. So you decide to surface that, and we try to include that in the remaining 15 or 20 seconds of an ad or the body copy of a creative. And finally, if you do your job right of stopping and paying attention and getting them to read the rest of the ad or the video, finally getting to take an action is having to click out to get to the other side. And so from a breakdown of an ad production, we think about, you know, the psychology in this particular way. And that extends, and I won't get into it now, but it extends to the landing page. It extends to the checkout process. It also extends to when you receive the product from the company or service that you're buying from and what that experience is like. But all of that goes into the broad funnel of marketing. And we just break down in each of these steps and how do you figure out how to systematically improve each of those incremental steps towards from that to purchase. And I can talk about the same thing for the Google Ads side, but it's still based on the core principles of getting people to show up in your front doors, being convinced, and taking action from at the end of that journey.
It's very interesting, and thank you for sharing that, because I think, and it's so true that listeners will learn more about it just to know what is the process and how people can, if they need some kind of Google Ads, Facebook ads to connect with you also, you know, just in that journey. And when you when how clients, how leads reach out to you, how do, because, and you do that for other companies, what I can you share with us about it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've done a lot of different things that some of it has worked and some of it has not worked. But nowadays, we probably have a good mix of word of mouth and inbound leads. Whereas before, we probably did more outbound outreach, where we would target companies that said, hey, I can see your Facebook ads that you're currently running live, right? Because these are public information. It's like, hey, I can see that some of the current ads that you're running live. May I send you a video, a recording of me giving you feedback on some of these ads? And so a lot of time is based on permission to marketing is what I would generalize it to be. And so right now, when a lot of people find us through, you know, past happy customers or from referrals or some other form of referral partnerships that we talked about briefly earlier, a lot of times when people are coming in, they're generally coming in with a particular problem. And a lot of the sales process that we happen within a 45-minute or an hour long like discovery or strategy call will uncover a lot of the problems. And usually by the end of it, they'll be, you know, having a clear understanding of the process of what we do and how it applies to the business. But finding us about us in the first place, more often than not, it used to be the most effective channel that we had was cold email. We would reach out to different brands, talk to the CMO, talk to the CEO, and said, hey, I see that you're currently running live with this. We'd like the product. We like the brand. May I give you some feedback? And I would record a 10-minute video, 15-minute video, 20-minute video where I'm going through the product or service live on a recording. That usually gets enough people to raise their hand and be like, yeah, I'm interested in talking to you.
And
What do I need?
you wanted to say that, or you're saying that someone from your team is going to research some companies, websites?
Mm-hmm. It
On,
used to be that. So I
and
used
used
to
to,
have I used to do it myself, right? And then we had a team, and then different people would go through the process for
and you can go
researching.
there and do the video of that and say, this is good, you need this, you need that, and you create that video and then send that video as a resume, as a review of that company, what they need to resolve or to add or to change in terms of
Yes,
campaign or however.
like I said, marketing is sales at scale. So we just did sales at scale. So we just
Mm.
kept running for a while. And I think right now, we're not in the same position that we used to do that kind of stuff anymore. We're a lot busier than we were before. And so I think, we're likely going to shift that same energy of being able to do that kind of analysis and breakdown. And we're going to turn it into advertising for ourselves. So we do a lot of lead gen ads for different companies and different brands. We do it for financial services. We did it for Canadian immigrations. We're about to do it for, like other software companies as well. So we do a lot of Google ads where we, pay $1, a certain amount of dollars per lead, and they would fill out a form to say, yep, I'm interested in product or service. We're likely going to start doing that for ourselves as well as we scale our marketing and services team. But right now, for this year, a lot of the energy is around improving fulfillment and making sure that our standard operating procedures for different aspects of our business is buttoned up and very strong. And we're very excited about how things have been going based on the progress we made so far before we go back and build out the marketing engine. So right now, that's been our primary focus compared to where we were previously. But when we were prospecting and we were very effective at that, a lot of it came down to just elbow grease, right? Building a list of potential contacts that we should work with, and just working down the list of saying, hey, we like this particular set of it was some of it was software assisted, but a lot of it was manual labor of like, let me do a quick analysis. And more often than not, we found a lot of interesting problems for us to solve in order for us to have that conversation to be had.
It's very interesting. And when you mentioned that, is this going to be like a cold email for them?
Mm-hmm. We did. Back then it was cold email. So cold
Email.
email
And
was
how it
the
was,
was the channel.
what is like percentage of responding to you
Oh
that
gosh,
they
I don't
wanted
know. I
to?
mean, the response rate depends on the industry too. So marketing agencies reaching out to brands is fairly crowded,
Mm.
and so more often than not, I think it used to be much more effective than it is. Let's say last year, when we first started, maybe in 2020, 2021, we probably had a much higher response rate. I don't know what the actual numbers off the top of my head, but it was not the number of people that reached out to that was a very important number, but it was the responses back that was positive that said, you know what, I'm interested in like a free video or a free sort of teardown of my product and service offering. That led to a lot of doors, and I think our conversions for that was not bad. It was fairly high. I want to say maybe like 1 in 10 people that we had the recording for gave a very positive response that eventually led to a sale or basically bought right then and there.
And when you go to you send them through email, that by email and for the first time, and that video, or you start connecting with them, and after that you send video with that review, what.
Usually they respond first. Usually they said, because in my email I'll be like, hey, I love the brand, I love this aspect about what you've done, I see that you guys are currently running ads. I'll talk about something that they're actually actively doing so that they know it's not a bot, right? And so when they see that, oh, somebody paid attention to research us and learn a little bit of us and talk a bit of my background or what have you, something personalized, um the ask was something very low barrier of like, hey, can I send you a free 10 and 15-minute video of something that I've learned about, about your landing pages, or something I learned about your service offering. We tried different things. We tried doing analytics audits. We tried doing landing page, but I found the most effective was the closest to our service offering, which was ad creative production, because everybody knew what good ads and bad ads look like, and they have a rough sense of if their existing ads were good or not. And so when we talked about giving feedback on ad creatives, most people were interested. If nothing else, of like, let's say they have no intention of hiring you, at the very least, they wanted to know how their ads were doing and given direct feedback, because they don't get a lot of honest feedback from people.
As you mentioned, I also have my customizable, it's not say course, but this coaching program for companies to start their own podcast.
Mm-hmm.
For business owners who wanted to start their own podcasts and work with them on that way, or just for some companies who wanted to start new brand podcast, and I can help them to host it.
Mhm.
This is something what I do also in terms
Right.
of, just by the way, to share with you here in the episode. And it's very interesting. And I've done something like that just to say to people, and they respond to me like, okay, go to the visit a website, say them that, for example, I do mostly, let's say, wellness industry.
Right.
Like it was like a narrowing something because
Sure.
we couldn't work with every all industries in the world. So
Of
this is
course.
very interesting, and
Of
because of that,
course.
I have such a kind of experience with it. Just and I was asking you about that just to see
Oh,
how
for sure.
it's.
For sure. And mind you, that was probably the one that worked the like most effectively. It was a lot of work, but it was the one that was the most effective for us. We've tried a bunch of different things, right? But I think we used to host like meetup groups to host speakers. And we've done we used to rely on a lot of referrals, a little bit too much on referrals, which made sales very inconsistent. But once we actually took ownership of the sales and marketing funnel for ourselves, ironically, I think that was actually when it was very effective. And I think what's interesting was that we were always very good at what we did prior to even like being more well known or having more success with our existing clients. And so it was kind of like pulling the cart before the horse. We built the technical skills first, and that's always the precursor of having anything that worked, which is also why by the time I actually did a lot of the free feedback sessions or the strategy calls with folks, most people on the call learned very quickly and were like, oh yeah, okay, like whatever you're thinking about these type of problems, we need somebody like that on the team. And so that's why, forget about case studies or backgrounds or those other things. Those things help, but more often than not, people want to know and want very specific feedback or advice around how your methodology or the things that you have like thought about applies to your expertise, applies to their unique situation. And if we found that to be the one that resonate the most with people, because that's what people care about.
Yeah, it's so true, and yeah, I love what you do. Just like just to think about it, and there are people in your team who are so multi-skills. I mean.
Not as much as I am, only because I came from a different background, and I think, and again, some of the ADHD kind of really helped me become multidisciplinary. But I think everybody on the team has a very consistent hunger for learning and growth, and that's kind of needed in the industry, right? The industry moves fast. There's a lot of moving parts, and so being good and being an agency gives you a lot of problems to solve every single day. And so I think we end up attracting a lot of high caliber teammates that I'm very proud to work with, largely because of how hungry and how interested they are in learning about the different aspects of the business. And so we don't try to get everybody to specialize, sorry, to be um, like cross trained in the way that I am. I come from a design and a software and a marketing background. That doesn't make sense to train staff for, but getting them to train between script writing and creative production, to being good at graphic design, to being good with strategic with the media account, those cross skills make a lot of sense, and we try to do training for that so that you can see how one piece ends and the other piece starts. But we don't train landing page designers in the same way. That's where we take strategists and project managers, really strategists, to see how the different moving parts move together.
Yes, yes, and because you have your holistic approach
Mhm.
to all those things, because you're experienced in design,
Mhm.
and it doesn't matter that other people, entrepreneurs, need to move. We are different, we are unique, and so because you have many skills and experience from your start and the beginning of your schooling, studies and other things, so you can also create for your team uh, to follow all those things like
Correct. And mind you, that was just me playing to my strengths of being multidisciplined and having different sort of skill sets and having like a wider background, which is also why, in a lot of like conversations, my primary job now, as opposed in addition to strategy and account management, is really sales, because it's hard for people to have the same set of cross background and training. And it's also like our unique advantage as we think about how does our agency position against everybody else, right? And so you might have a lot of marketing agencies, we could have a lot of like Facebook ad, companies, but rarely do they have the same sort of like cross reading that we would have. So that when we get on the strategy calls, generally a lot of brand owners and VP of marketings and CMOs really resonate with that because they can see a lot of value having that person on the team, and then the rest of it is just figuring out the different departments within agency to service the various fulfillment needs that they might
And
have.
I can understand you 100% because you have your unique approach. This is you. You're authentic,
Absolutely.
and you do that
Absolutely.
in your own through your
Absolutely.
experience. And it doesn't matter
Absolutely.
that you have 1,000 marketing agency, but your agency is only yours, and it has that strategy and way how it works, and how collaborate and how approach to the problem and solve problem, and as you said, SEO CEOs and other to connect with them and have strategy session call.
100%. And again, something that I would specify very clearly that it is a strength that I have uniquely. I don't generally recommend being a generalist firm. I generally don't tell people that, oh, you should focus on multiple different skills. But if that's your thing, and the one thing that you're really good at is learning, and the one thing that you're really good at is cross training these skill sets across different disciplines, then of course, then it makes us very unique when we go talk to other brands and founders, because they don't come across that type of archetype a lot, or they'll see very quickly why, when you do truly have those interdisciplinary skills, and how that would apply to translating into strong, effective campaign performances. Because the alternative for them often is going to a large agency that have a lot of departments, but they generally don't like working with large agencies because they either charge a lot or they don't care as much. And so being small allows us to have that, but it comes with its own set of challenges. And so it's not something that I would generally recommend. The thing that I would play against is understanding what makes you unique, allows you to be authentic on your presentation to the outside, and it also allows you to build your business in a way that resonates deeply with yourself.
And I think what you mentioned now, and that is at the first place, is personal brand. I mean, personal branding, because people work with people, in terms who you are, you're authentic, as you said. As you said, it
Absolutely.
doesn't matter that there are people need to be multi-skills, because you are who you are, you know who you are. And from, as I mentioned, and we spoke about it, through that, your experience and your interests, what you want to know, you started like that. But it doesn't matter that other, it's going to be one field, but be good in it if you wanted to move and cross over to the other, to the other field
Absolutely.
of learning.
Absolutely.
And John, do you work with clients all around the world?
We do, although most of the brands are North America based. Time zone wise, a little bit easier. We just spoke with a brand that's based in the Netherlands, a really large brand. Um, that are based there. So we do have clients that are outside of North America, but primarily we work with brands that are based here. We have some local brands, Canadian companies, but we have brands in the East Coast. We have brands in West Coast. We work with people all over. I mean, that's the power of the internet, right? You're
Yeah, I know,
geographically
I
independent,
know.
and a large part of it is boiling down
And
to.
and when you mention for audience, maybe people can connect with you, especially it doesn't matter which industry, or you can just specifically some industries for audience. Maybe some of listeners want. We will put all in information, links to your website and pages, social media business pages. But for people, maybe they have brand and they wanted to have some Google ads, some Facebook ads, and but they wanted to just to reach out to you.
No, for sure. The easiest way to find us online is going to our marketing site. It's the number two x dot agency. And so you can also look for me and connect with me on socials. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, and primarily on you can also find me on Instagram too, but it's at JTC Chan. So we'll include it in the show notes. But most of it is if you're building and running a business online and have some initial traction from existing customers and generally have an interest in figuring out how to build your brand in a sustainable manner, I'd love to chat, right? So we helped a lot of other brands solve similar challenges. And if you're someone that is interested in doing that kind of thing for yourself and aren't sure how to navigate growth challenges, I'm more than happy to chat with you.
That's lovely. Thank you so much. And what do you think about AI using it in Google Ads and
Oh, for
Facebook
sure.
ads? Do you
So
do it?
there's
Is it helpful? as a
Yes
tool?
and no. Yes and no. So it's helpful right now. AI is a very powerful tool, and there's no question about it that it's going to be transformative in the industry in the same way that the internet was transformative to a lot of industries. I think that's a very helpful parallel to think about. So in many ways, our entire team and the companies we work with are very all in on AI. And we're talking about using AI as part of the processes for production, so and fulfillment. But I think one of the things that we're trying to do for ourselves this year is working and building AI agents that are effectively automations that are powered by AI. So instead of you prompting a particular interface, Claude, ChatGPT, whatever else, to get a particular response, but to have external triggers like a notification or a schedule or what have you to solve a different part of the business. So as an agency, one way to think about agencies is that we're in the business of processes, business operations. There's a strategic component, but a lot of fulfillment is following checklists of things that we need to do. And so in many ways, I think a lot of our staff has been trained to use AI assisted work so that if you're doing copywriting or what have you, we never ask them to take the copy right away from AI and just copy and paste it in. That's usually not super helpful or performant, but using AI as a way of generating new ideas, using AI to generate a lot of research to use as a seeding point for in between work, it's super helpful. But I think where a lot of our work is going to be heading to is not just getting AI assisted sort of work, but it's to use or curation or research. But it's really going to be getting AI to automate a lot of the processes that used to be manually done by different staff members. And so we're very excited about where the world is headed with that. And I think, being an agency allows us to really capitalize on how do we make more of the same thing that we do in a much more efficient manner or in a higher quality of production. So we think about that a lot.
Yeah, that's yeah, and AI is so useful too. But when you use it, we need to resonate with that and use what we. But it's so helpful, as you said, to get notification, to answer some questions, to that you as a person, just save your time,
Mm-hmm.
just to help. We talk. Yeah, no, it's such a pleasure to talk to you today and talking to you today. And to the end, I think that we will connect again to some of next episodes. But also, what would be the message for our audience? For example, if they wanted to start a business or they are in stuck or they not just something, you have your experience just for an audience, and that audience can just connect with John. He will help you a lot, just if you wanted to
No, for
promote
sure.
your and do campaign for your
No,
company.
for sure. I mean, I don't necessarily think you have to work with me to take advantage of this. I think if you think about what's been fantastic over the last 20, 30 years, it's just the power of the internet, right? It used to be that making money online was like a pipe dream. How do I work remotely? How do I get paid online? How do I, start a e-commerce store? A lot of the barriers of starting and making your first dollar online right now it's a lot simpler than our ancestors and our predecessors. And so, if anything, if you're on the fence and you're thinking about it, the most important thing you can do is just start. It doesn't have to be a big thing, it doesn't have to be a successful venture, but starting today is, I think, the most important thing. And we're at a point in our lives right now where there's more free educational content and also free connections that you can reach out to people for to get advice. If you think about this conversation, we're two people on this planet Earth on two completely different countries connecting and sharing some of the backgrounds and knowledge that we have for the things that we lived and learned on. And that's honestly like the basis of what the internet has given us. And we're about to see another explosion of innovation and proliferation with the advent of AI. And so it's a very confusing space and time in on one hand of all the different changes, and it could be a lot to process and digest, but it's also the time where it's the cheapest way for us to start online, and we have all the information at our fingertips, and all you have to do is just grind your way through this and having the energy to persist and go through that. If you have those two core ingredients, the world is your oyster, my friend. I think that's kind of the core message that I have for people, because we're in such an interesting time to be alive with all these things that are happening right now. So
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you for sharing. And there are people who ask me, they're old school, and older than me, and they say, and I talk about my podcast, and they say, how do you find them? And I said, no, they found me. you know, to the referral, or there's some people come to me and find my podcast and they come to me and be a guest as you are today. It's very
Absolutely.
simple.
It's
It's very
magical,
simple.
right?
It's
Yeah,
magical.
it's simple, but it's also magical because it's like, how does that even happen, right? And again, that's what the internet has afforded us. And so, on one hand, it's like, yeah, I don't think everybody should be an entrepreneur because I used to think that where it's very important to do that, but I think because it's a lot of stress and a lot of energy that I don't know if I want to subject to certain types of people anymore in the same way that I used to. But at the same time, it's like if that's your inclination and that's kind of where your energy wants to go, how could you not, right? Like there's never been a better time in that sense where there's so many options available to you, and that could be very paralyzing at the same time, but it's also freeing if you have the right mentality and right place at the right time to put that energy towards something.
Yeah, that's so true. And I traveled around the world in front of my computer, to be honest. Thankfully that but people, this is maybe we will talk about next episode sometime. It's so important that people are shy, that people are afraid, or stuck, and we need to break through that barriers. So, but yeah, it's a beauty of online space for people who know to use it the right way and
Absolutely.
to learn it. And we learn from
Absolutely.
each other. John, it's such a pleasure having you today. I really enjoyed your conversation and your story. And it was like a masterclass just for people to share your knowledge, your experience. Thank you for sharing everything. And I really, really enjoyed and learned from you. So we'll continuously grow together and have you again on my podcast. You're so
Likewise.
welcome.
Thank you, Christina. This was very fun. I appreciate you taking the time to record this.
Thank you so much and have a lovely day. I'm so excited. And bye for now.